Angela, and going to Rushanara, please. To Rushanara. Can Rushanara hear us? Do you have your microphone on, Rushanara?
Yeah, I do.
On?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, I just want to pick up on these points that have been made. Do you think, I mean, in terms of the broad thrust of what you're saying, what's your sense of how small businesses are ultimately being treated? Just taking the long view of how small businesses ended up really suffering in the last financial crisis. You spoke about survival, and it does feel like there's a narrative, not your narrative, but it's a case of survival of the fittest. But the impact on different groups of businesses is going to be different. The larger businesses, quite understandably, because of strategic interests, are going to get more help faster. They're going to be able to overcome some of these barriers you mentioned. You touched on the 100% guarantee. Can you be more explicit? Should the government now find a way, make that strategic decision about saving those small businesses, particularly the ones that are in the front line, that are actually essential to our communities, that the government should step in and support them, at least for the foreseeable future, because they didn't start off with a level playing field in the first place, and this is exacerbating those inequalities. Do you think the government should step in and take action now, in the light of what you and your colleague have said?
Well, first of all, the SME community and the smaller end of the SME community are the vital backbone of business in the United Kingdom. I think they will be absolutely critical to our successful emergence from this crisis. And I believe that we should do everything that we can do to provide the support that enables that economic capacity and the personal and social issues associated with businesses failing be avoided as much as it possibly can be. Where you define the limit in terms of businesses to support and not to support is ultimately, in the current circumstances, a matter for government rather than for me as a spokesman for the banking industry. The banking industry will do everything it can to support as best it can within the parameters that it's got. Ultimately, banks are lending depositors money, and so unless there is a measure of support for greater risk appetite than trying to get the money back at the end of the crisis, they can't lend to businesses that they perceive to be likely to fail through the crisis.
Basically, your message to government is, government, get your act together. I'm putting words into your mouth, but get your act together on this very essential section of our economy, employing millions of people, and banks will step in and address it. But don't attack banks when we are doing the best we can under the circumstances. Sorry, I know these are my words, but essentially, I would
never say, government, get your act together. And I believe the unprecedented circumstances that we're in and the range of measures that have been introduced, not just in lending, but also in rates and in jobs, are incredible. They're unprecedented. They're being deployed at speed and at pace. And I also think the government is listening as circumstances emerge and as visibly we see those support packages that are working more or less better. I'm absolutely convinced that government will adapt to the circumstances as they are seen out there on the street.
But the perception in our constituencies with small businesses, with respect to what you're saying, and while I also share your points about government operating under unprecedented circumstances, the perception is big businesses and medium-sized businesses are being looked after, and small businesses are really struggling and they're not getting the help as quickly as possible. And that's where the urgency is required. That is what's happening. Are you feeding those messages directly to government? Very firmly, very strongly. I mean, this committee will do the same. We'll keep doing it. But the important thing is acting quickly, because those businesses are not surviving. Some of them are not surviving. Some of them won't survive because of a failure to act fast enough to respond to them and put them higher up the agenda, which seems to be the case at every crisis.
What I would say is that we, the industry, are certainly feeling the pressure to do as much as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can, and are working 7 days a week, 24/7, to do what we can within the terms that have been made available. If government chooses to change policy, and if the banks are part of that deployment mechanism and other non-bank financial lenders that Stephen represents, and the fintechs and the peer-to-peer platforms, we would be delighted to support that effort as well. And we will do everything we can to make it a success. But I can tell you that the government that we engage with on a daily basis,
would you recommend that? Well,
is really.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Jones, would you recommend the government does choose to make that decision? Should the government make that choice? What would you say? I mean, I'm very grateful for all that the banking sector is doing and all that you're doing 7 days a week, where everybody's working very hard. Should the government be doing this?
That's a political judgment, and I'm not paid here to give political opinions. I'm here to represent the banking industry and to make sure the banking industry does everything it possibly can. One of your fellow committee members, I believe the chair, pointed to moral hazard issues. If you effectively give grants to all businesses and take the risk that you're giving them to businesses that would have failed anyway. And I think there is a threshold which we need to understand, and we need to make judgments around what side of that threshold we want to be. I want to see as many businesses that have the chance of surviving this crisis be able to get through this awful downtime that we're all suffering, in order for the good of the economy and good of our society. And I know that my members want that as well.
And does the moral hazard issue, how closely are you and others looking at moral hazard for big businesses and medium-sized businesses? And can I just give you one final question, supplementary, which is about the outset of the scheme. There were lots of reports about small businesses being offered loans that were at very high rate, with the guarantee, of course, that that's gone. But high rate practice, is that something that's still continuing? Do you have any evidence of that happening, or has that been addressed?
It's not those high rates under CBILS are not loans that I recognize, because CBILS loans were 80% guaranteed by government, so they should not have been offered a high rate. The average unsecured rate, even before CBILS in January, was in single-digit figures across the major lenders. Now, there may be higher risk businesses that were not eligible to CBILS that were being offered higher risk financing with a greater risk of the lender losing money, at much higher rates. But I don't recognize that characterization of loans under CBILS being offered even in double digits. So, and I wouldn't expect loans to be offered in double digits under CBILS. It should be mid-single digits, the kind of rates that are being offered, reflecting the guarantee and the risk profile and the security that's made available under those loans. As for mid and larger loans, the government is working on what it calls CL bills for businesses with a turnover of above £45 million, but with a sub-investment grade credit profile. These are the stranded middle who are not don't have access to the Bank of England commercial paper facility for the largest and highest credit-worthy business. We're working very hard with government on deploying that, making sure that it can get out of the door quickly. And I think I see no difference between a small, medium-sized or large business in terms of whether one is more or less deserving than another for support in order to survive this crisis. They all play very, very important roles, both in our economy and in our wider society.
Thank you. I'm going to go now to Anthony.